This is an ambitious topic to discuss the history of the universe in about 20 minutes or so. So I'm going to rush through it. I hope it's not too heavy for you. And, just raise your hand if I'm losing you or whatever. But, the point of this is to basically realize, we live in, you could call this a ginormous universe. It's a huge universe. It's bigger than we can even fathom. It's a very dangerous universe. If you ever watch any documentaries, you see that our planet is extremely rare. And if you were any other spot in the Milky Way galaxy, you might crash into a star or what have you. And it's very dangerous out there. So many things. One of the things we take for granted is just life on Earth, that we're alive and that we have this peaceful place, and the plants grow outside and the sun is shining. Because just change. If the Earth was even a tiny bit different distance from the sun, we'd have a lot of problems, and we probably wouldn't be here. It's not too hot, not too cold, just right. And you don't find that anywhere else in the universe as far as we know. So that's what this sermon is intended to do, just give us a better appreciation for life and the big picture. And even a hurricane, when you see how huge everything is and the story of where we've been over 14 billion years, even a hurricane is small change. It's not even that big a deal. Like we take for granted this Earth, and I know in my own thinking, I tend to think, the Earth has been here for a long time. It's been here for millions of years. No, it's been here for 4.5 billion years. You have any idea how long that is? The Earth has been sitting here, and I don't think it was just waiting for us to arrive during that time. The Earth had plenty of other things to do. So, in our human-centered way of looking at things, I know for me, I tend to think humans are the center of the universe. I don't say that, but I just take it for granted in my thinking. And when you look at how long the Earth has been here, it's very obvious that's not true. I don't think we're the whole reason for it. We're not the be-all, end-all of it. At the same time, we're probably the latest innovation of this universe over 14 billion years. One trend that you do see when you look at the big picture is that things have been getting more complicated, more complex. The universe is always cooking up a more complicated stew or brew of things. Things started out very simply with just different gases, and really you had mostly just two gases. You had hydrogen in the beginning, which is it is the simplest element, I believe, and then that becomes helium, which is the second simplest element. But now look at all the elements we have, and those make up our bodies. And basically, within each person here, you have a whole universe happening within you. You have different solar systems, you have the endocrine system, nervous system, circulation, it goes on and on, respiration. All these different solar systems within you are working together to give you consciousness and life. So it's quite complicated. That's when people say, how are things? And you say, it's pretty complicated. Well, of course it is. You're one of the most complicated things ever created in the whole universe. So the big history perspective helps us to think big. So I'm just going to run through it, and I'm going to start at the Big Bang. 13.7 billion years ago. Of course, this is still a theory, but we're pretty sure there was a huge explosion that time, and it gave birth to everything that we know of. And hydrogen was the first element created, and the clouds of hydrogen condensed to form the first stars. And these were born about 380,000 years after the Big Bang. And as a star lives, it fuses hydrogen into helium, and then as it gets hotter and hotter, it becomes carbon and oxygen. Of course, we're made of carbon, we breathe oxygen. So, you can kind of say we're made of stars, because carbon is only created in a star. And as temperatures in the star get hotter, if it becomes a supernova, things get hotter and hotter. That's the only thing in the whole universe that's hot enough to make the other elements that we know of on Earth. If you're wearing any gold jewelry or silver jewelry, the only thing that can make gold or silver is a star when it's really, really hot. So your jewelry was made inside a star. Your bodies are made inside stars. Everything that your body is made of. Iron, the iron in our blood, hemoglobin. Iron can only be created when a star explodes as a supernova. So everything that you are was made inside a star. And that inspired this song that I wrote.
The Milky Way swirls like a feather duster as you spin around the Virgo supercluster of 47,000 galaxies made of the same stuff as you and me. Don't underestimate a bag of 14 billion-year-old particles like you. Make the best of what you are. You were born inside at the trees and learn to breathe.
So anyway, after that, the sun eventually was created, the same way as other stars. Hydrogen and helium gas swirled together to form the sun. There was a lot of gas and debris that wasn't close enough to the center, so it didn't get sucked in completely by the gravity. And you can call that the leftovers. These are things that were swirling around but never quite combined to be part of the sun. And as well as like little, rocks and asteroids, that kind of stuff. So basically this stuff swirled around the sun in different orbits. And over a long time, these things coalesced together and crashed into each other. One of them became the Earth. So, like I said, humans, we always think we're the point of everything, we're the center of everything. Maybe stars or the sun was the center of everything, because we're really just the leftovers from when the sun was created. Interesting way of thinking about it. Anyway, we also always think that the Earth is such this wonderful paradise, this Garden of Eden. It obviously was not like that all the time. The first 500 million years, which is a long time, longer than the dinosaurs were even here eventually. But those first 500 million years were hellish, and in fact they call it the Hadean era of the Earth's existence. There was extreme heat, there was constant interstellar collisions, other rocks and stuff still crashing into the Earth. It was radioactive here because of nuclear bombs, because of the nuclear energy of surrounding stars and whatnot. And you have to fast forward 1 billion years before you get to the first life on Earth. And that was about 3.8 billion years ago. I wrote this song that's kind of inspired by the early Earth and how we shouldn't take for granted the Earth that we have nowadays.
Paradise connection we got here. What a miracle of randomness. If the tiniest detail was altered, there would be no us. But ever since the eyes retreated at the end of my last ice age, I've tried to conquer this earth of which I am afraid, of which I'm made. 4.5 billion years before we arrived, Earth was like hell. Nothing could survive. Poison in the skies till the oceans could arise. Billions of years of work for this relationship to thrive. We gotta keep this earth. We gotta keep this earth. We gotta keep this earth till we get another one. We gotta keep this earth. We gotta keep this earth. We gotta keep this earth. We don't get another one.
The origins of life, of course, I could do a whole sermon, a bunch of sermons just about that. Let me summarize by just saying life appears to be made up of amino acids and nucleic acids, as far as science is concerned. And these were evolving in the environment of the early Earth, and things just kept mixing up, all these different chemicals and elements and stuff that were on the Earth, kept finding different combinations, and eventually one of those combinations led to RNA and DNA, and these are the means by which life would eventually copy itself. So the first single-celled organisms arose 3.8 billion years ago, and a few million years later, single-celled organisms had invented photosynthesis, which is kind of a cool thing. It's where you get energy from sunlight, and that was a huge success. But actually, a byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen, which we know because that's our relationship with plants nowadays. But back in the day, 3.5 billion years ago, oxygen was poisonous to many single-celled organisms, and as it built up in the atmosphere, many single-celled organisms were killed. It was kind of like a holocaust of all those organisms. But just paved the way for new variations of life. And about 1 billion years ago, more complicated single-celled organisms appeared, and we call these eukaryotes. And basically in our modern cells now, if you look at cells in your body, each cell has within it like little baby cells, and they're different things. We call them like mitochondria. It's this structure inside a cell that is like the powerhouse and converts food into energy, I guess. But back in the day, maybe that mitochondria was a separate cell all on its own, and maybe the one cell ate the other cell, but somehow that cell that got eaten stayed alive within the other cell. And so that's the beginning of our modern cells. I don't know, did you follow that? But basically, these things were eating each other, and they became something more complex. And all of these different parts worked for the greater benefit of the whole cell and made them stronger and more complicated, like I said. Eventually, these more complicated cells created things like us. So thank God for that. Also, sexual reproduction began about 1 billion years ago. So a slightly different process than we know it to be. But before that, reproduction was just the cloning of a parent, so you didn't really get any different traits. But with sexual reproduction, you have two parents, so you get traits from each of them. And it kind of jump-started evolution in a way. It makes things faster because there's more variations. Every time you have two different things coming together, you're creating whole new things and eventually new species. Over a few million years, some of those single-celled eukaryote, those single-celled complex cells, started to connect to other single cells and create multiple cells. And of course, your body is made up of, millions or billions of cells all attached together. But this attaching thing first started just a few million years ago, actually 600 million years ago. And 100 million years later, we had the first creatures who actually had bones, like backbones. We call those vertebrates, and they lived in the sea. Actually, the seas were not here the whole time either. Back when the Earth was in its early days, everything was rather hellish. From the different storms that were brewing, a lot of water vapor got created and eventually rained down to form the oceans. So the oceans weren't even here all the time. And the oceans were a great breeding ground for the first forms of life, and that included us. And by 100 million years after that, so going back around like 400 million years ago, some creatures who had backbones had successfully left the oceans to live on land, and those are our ancestors. We were originally in the sea. We were fish who got a little curious and started to take little trips out into the land. We couldn't stay there that long, but give us a few, 100 million years or so, we're staying for pretty long times, and our bodies are adapting to do both. And of course, we're talking about land reptiles and amphibians. And unfortunately for a lot of those early creatures, most were wiped out. There was a huge extinction event that no one knows about 250 million years ago. No one knows what caused that. That created a vacuum in which new species could be created and could thrive. And between 250 to 210 million years ago, two new species did arise. We had mammals, which is our ancestors, and dinosaurs. So that extinction was before the dinosaur extinction. There's a lot of history that we're covering here, millions, billions of years. Anyway, mammals were warm-blooded. They still are. They had fur. We still have some fur on our head in different places. Drank their mother's milk for early nourishment, but they were very small. They were more like rodents at this stage. And the cold-blooded, more powerful dinosaurs were definitely ruling the waves at this point for the next 200 million years or so. So maybe dinosaurs were the point of it all, because we haven't even been here anywhere near that long. I think hominins, which is the kind of species we're part of apes who walk upright, we've been around about 7 million years. So, dinosaurs have 193 million years on us. So I know I'm probably boggling you with all these figures, but 67 million years ago, that was when an asteroid apparently crashed into the Earth, and that wiped out the dinosaurs. Mammals saw their opening, and we took over. But you got to give it another 60 million years before the upright walking apes came around the scene. That was us. Of course, the very earliest were nothing like us, just because they were apes who walked upright. Obviously, we've come a long way since then. Because the early primates lived in trees, they developed the stereo vision, having two eyes, because it was definitely advantageous to see what you're grabbing and who's coming where. And they also developed grasping limbs, which we use now to play guitar. But we originally used them to climb trees. Now, I'm just starting with human history now, and then human history in itself, there's so much to it that we don't even usually think about. When we study history in school, we usually start about 10,000 years ago. But there's actually about 240,000 years before that in which we were fully human, we were fully modern us, but we don't consider that important. We call it the Paleolithic era, the Stone Age. But the thing is, we think we're so smart now, we're innovating. We've got the iPads and the iPhone and, what have you, electricity, all this good stuff, heat, all this stuff that we now don't take for granted from the past 2 weeks. But, really Paleolithic humans, they were innovating too. It's just they were innovating fire. They discovered fire and they learned how to use it. They were innovating hunting without getting yourself killed. They were innovating spears and tools, all this stuff. This was the cutting edge innovations of their day, so maybe we should pay attention to that history, because it's our history, it really is. Just like a modern day shaman, in the rainforest of the Amazon or what have you, they're a total master of the jungle. They know every plant, all the medicinal purposes for that. That was us, that was our ancestors. We knew that stuff too, and obviously you got to be pretty intelligent and daring to try these plants, and you got to be innovative to find out what works and how to heal people. So we were doing all that long before so-called history. Just because we didn't write it down doesn't mean it didn't happen. Let's go back here. 35,000 years ago, apparently, we were inventing spear points and knives. And that's what the Steve Jobs of that day was working on, knives and spear points. By 100,000 years ago, all humans lived in Africa, but we had settled a lot of different environments within that continent. There was desert, there was forest, there was mountains, savanna, seashore. Okay, so it takes something to adapt to that. Other species, they might adapt to 1 or 2 different environments, but we were adapting to all these different ones, and that enabled us to be ready to conquer the world pretty much. We also invented boats, canoes, and rafts. By 50,000 years ago, we had colonized Australia, Papua New Guinea, Tasmania. That's all coming from Africa. You need to have some sailing skills if you're going to get across the water. Most of those places you need to cover at least 40 miles of open water in a raft or a boat or something just to get to these places. You got to have skills to do that. That's an innovation. And then, of course, you're encountering completely different alien animals that you got to hunt. You go to Australia, you're dealing with completely different animals that you're going to have to live off of. Different plants, different environments. And no other species does these things successfully. No other species cross water like this, as far as land species. We'd even made it to Siberia by 30,000 years ago. We were hunting large mammals like a mammoth and making skin clothing from the fur of these animals. And we were managing fire, like I was saying. And by 10,000 years ago, we had spread everywhere in this world. So definitely get a pat on the back for that. Let's give it up for the humans. We did good. We also wreaked our first havoc on the environment. Yeah, it was starting even back then. 50,000 years ago, believe it or not, we had our first run-ins with that. Because we overhunted the animals. So we caused extinctions, mammoth, saber-toothed tiger, giant kangaroos, even North American horses, from what I read. So that was us. We take the credit for that too. We made things go extinct already, 50,000 years ago. Then when the Ice Age ended and we finally could stay in one place for long enough to maybe plant a seed or whatever, we invented this crazy thing called agriculture, which is definitely, as cutting edge as any technology that we've come up with lately. That was about 10,000 years ago. And, things took off from then, and then we invented this weird thing called civilization that we're still trying to figure out. We were domesticating animals. By 9000 BC, we were having pet cows, pretty much, and taking the milk from them. Pigs, sheep, and goats. And that was in Turkey, in Iraq, in the Middle East, Egypt. We domesticated dogs, cats, and horses. Dogs and cats, maybe we were going back longer than that, but certainly in ancient Egypt, you see the pictures of the cats in the hieroglyphs. And the first cities. And from what I read, I don't know, this probably always is changing, but I think the oldest city is the city of Jericho. But it's not the city of Jericho that you know of in the Bible. That's a lot more recent. This is like the ancestor of that city in the same place from 11,000 years ago, where 1,000 people were living in 70 mud brick dwellings, supporting themselves by farming. That's the first city. There was also Kaçlıhuyuk, which I don't really know how to say that, but that's in modern Turkey. That was another city from about 9,000 years ago. So anyway, long story short, we've come a long way from hydrogen gas to cities, and of course it got crazier since then. It got a lot more complicated since 9,000 years ago. That's probably a whole other sermon in itself as far as the modern era goes, but we've definitely kept increasing in complexity. About 300 years ago in the 1700s, things jump-started in a new way, and then we had the Industrial Revolution, And innovation has just been happening crazy since then. So anyway, I think we're just the latest chapter in this beautiful planet. Beautiful planet, the history of evolutions and different combinations that it tries over billions of years. And this whole story makes me very grateful for what this planet has given to me and to us all.